One of the commonest demons that haunts creative people is perfectionism. Over and over again, when I say, what's your biggest problem in your creative work? People tell me, oh, I'm such a perfectionist, I'm a perfectionist. I don't like anything that I make because by the time I've finished it, I've learnt something so that it's not perfect anymore. So I just wanted to look a little bit at perfectionism and how we can tackle this. Now, if perfectionism is where you look at a piece of work and you say, it could be better, it's not good enough, it could be better. There's kind of two sides to perfectionism, isn't there? Because you've got the useful kind of perfectionism and the useless kind. You've got the useful kind of perfectionism is the kind when you look at something you've done in a project and you say, oh, damn, I shouldn't have done that like that. I should have done it like this. And actually, maybe I will unpick that and do that again. That's the useful kind because that pushes you forward. That's the practical kind. I've done that here. This little ruffle that I'm making for that chemise back there. How I'm joining this lace earlier in the week. I was just kind of folding it over and sewing it down as long as the pattern matched. And then I realised that you're supposed to cut around the motif. I don't know where you can see that there. You're supposed to cut around the motif and sew it down very carefully. So that's what I'm going to do. So that was a useful moment of perfectionism because that's when you look at it and say, it's not good enough, but I know why and I know what to do. So that's just striving to be better. That's the practical kind because there's a specific thing there that you know you can improve upon. That's the good kind. That pushes you forward. The useless kind of perfectionism, the kind of perfectionism that kills your soul and holds you back, is the kind when it's useless, when it's a generalised sense of, it's just not good enough. Or just a sense that overall the whole thing, you're not as good. It's when it becomes about you being not good enough, not the work being not good enough. It's when it becomes a way of beating yourself up rather than a way of pushing yourself forward. It's the negative kind of generalised perfectionism rather than a specific positive kind of, I did that bit wrong, let me do it like this instead. So I just want to first of all separate those two because there is a kind of perfectionism that's useful. So how do you deal with the useless kind of perfectionism when it's really not productive? Well, there's a great place where you can look at this. The reason I've been thinking about perfectionism this week is because our competition entries have just gone live at Foundations Revealed. 53 people have entered our competition. And not a sales pitch, you can go and look at all the competition entries for free. And here's the interesting thing. I do want you to go and look at those competition entries at foundationsrevealed.com because when you read the stories of how these projects were made, from the beginners through the improvers to the advanced people, to the experienced people, they've all had this theme of struggle. None of them, you see these fabulous, wonderful pictures at the top of the page, and wow, they're wonderful. But when you read the story, every time, almost every one of them has shared their struggle, how it didn't all go right, how they had one idea and then they had to scrap it and try something else, how they waited and waited and waited and didn't have the perfect materials and got to a point where the deadline was looming and they just had to use what they had. And it was fine. So, using what you've got rather than waiting for the perfect materials. I think it's really in reading these stories that you can get a sense of how perfectionism holds us all back, that it's not you. It's not just something that's inside of you. It's a demon we've all got. Lots and lots of people saying, I've been looking at some of these comments and trying to write down notes to see what are the themes here. When everybody struggles with this perfectionism, you just never know what you're capable of, one of them says, if you don't push yourself. You've just got to push through it, keep going anyway. You've got to see the perfectionism demon and just keep barreling on regardless. Even though it's there, you're not going to make it go away. You're just going to have to keep going through it. Here's another great quote that sums it up. Melissa Bransom, who made one of our beginners, who made an entry called Broken Hive. She has this gold corset with all this fabulous kind of honeycomb and bees and stuff on it. Incredible work. I digitally cut, she says, about 3,000 hexagons from gold-flecked cork to mimic honeycomb. Can we just stop for a second? Then I wove the knitting ribbon through the empty hexagons. Then I stared at it for a week and got nothing else done. Here's where I stalled out. I was wasting time on Instagram and ran across the post about Lucy Emke's entry from last year. She's Wasted Creations on Instagram, where she said, remember, it doesn't have to be perfect to look perfect to everybody else. She says she made a comment about liking that thought and took that as encouragement and carried on regardless. She said it was easy to decide to do it, the competition entry, but daunting to follow through. However, it was worth every bit of crying, doubt and bleeding fingers to complete it. Just to say that I did, and knowing that I could complete it made me very happy. So remember, it doesn't have to be perfect to look perfect to everybody else. So think about how the way everybody else sees your work is not the same way as you see it. You are seeing it through the eyes of that demon in your head. And nobody else has got your perfectionism demon. And you have to take off the glasses of that perfectionism demon and see how everybody else is going to see it. Sometimes that takes walking away for a couple of days. Sometimes you can just talk your perfectionism demon down. But I love the part she says about how it was worth every bit of crying, doubt and bleeding fingers. Everybody has the crying and the doubt and the bleeding fingers. To just keep going is the secret to dealing with perfectionism. Just keep going. Just to say that I did. Just to say that you can. Knowing that I could complete it made me very happy. Knowing that you can, knowing that you did. It's not about the whole project being perfect. It's about knowing that you can and knowing that you did. So, my name's Kathy Hay. Tell me about your struggle with your perfectionism demon in the comments. Tell me how you deal with it. And go do some sewing this week.